A global ban on landmines was signed in 1997. It was a milestone treaty which Britain's Princess Diana played a significant role in bringing about. But now the Ottawa Convention is under threat, with NATO members Finland, Poland and the Baltic states all moving to withdraw from it. So, what impact is this likely to have, and why are they turning away from the decades-old pact? Hello and welcome to Roundtable. I'm Enda Brady. Now, several European countries are considering withdrawing from the Ottawa Convention, which bans the use of anti-personnel mines. They say it's because of security concerns and a response to Russia's growing military threat. But many fear it is a dangerous step backwards, which could lead to more civilian deaths and serious injuries.
In 1997, the late Princess Diana made an unforgettable stand against landmines. On a visit to Angola, she walked through a minefield. The move generated a series of iconic images, helping to shift global opinion. Her campaign eventually led to a ban on the weapons, embodied in the Ottawa Convention. Landmines were used as far back as the American Civil War. Later, they were deployed heavily during conflicts in Southeast Asia, the Middle East and the Balkans. Once buried, anti-personnel landmines can lie silently for decades. Designed to detonate under a human foot. No distinction is made between soldier and civilian.
85% of the victims of these little hidden bombs, or hidden killers, we like to call them, are civilians, and 40% of those are children.
Today, the war in Ukraine is forcing some countries to reconsider their position. Poland, Finland and the Baltic states are now debating whether to leave the Ottawa Convention.
Finland is also considering this decision to leave the International Convention banning anti-personnel mines, so I think that soon all NATO's eastern flank countries in the northeastern region will take a similar decision.
With global consensus now in question, are we returning to a more dangerous era? Or is this a calculated step to defend against growing military threats?
Well, I can speak now to Zoran Jesic in Banja Luka. He's a landmine victim who lost his right leg when he stepped on a landmine in Bosnia while serving in the Serbian army. Zoran, thanks for joining us on Roundtable. Just take our viewers back to that awful day that you stepped on a landmine. Just talk us through what happened and the impact on your life.
Yes, first of all, thank you for giving me a chance to speak about this and to raise my voice about this very important issue that we have these days. Like you said, 1994, like a 21-year man, soldier, I stepped on a mine, and it was very traumatic experience. Unfortunately, I lost my right leg, and after that started my struggle to bring me back again in the normal life, if I can say like that. And it was really very tough struggle inside of me, and because of that, I am really shocked with the problem that we have now about some countries that wanted to leave the mine ban treaty. It was like a punch in my head, and like you said, like you asked me right now, when I heard that some countries want to leave mine ban treaty, it brought me back in my reality, 1994, and if you believe me, I started to go through that again in my dreams, because I was thinking a lot about possible new mine survivors and mine victims, and I hope that we still will have some reasonable people and decision makers that will not allow that we again have a problem with landmines with the new countries. 2025, like you can see, was our dream that we will finish the job and have a land free of mines, but unfortunately it seems that we will have to start our fight from the start.
Zoran, if you were to speak to the leaders of Poland, Estonia, Latvia, Finland, Lithuania, who are making these decisions, what would you say to them?
I would be very strict, very open, very direct. Using landmines in this modern era will not give you any kind of advantage and will not protect your border. Believe me, if you put the landmines in your land to protect your border, they will not hurt enemy you think that is your enemy. They will wait for your civilians. They will kill your children. They will kill your women, your innocent people, because with mines you never know. Because, in war, the battle lines are moving and you never know when you put the mine in the land who will step on it. And in the sight of this, your question, I'm sure that the bigger number of mine victims and mine survivors will be from the side of the country that will put that mines in the ground.
Well, powerful words there from Zoran Jesic. Let's meet our guests now. Joining us from Milan, we have Elisabeth Gosselin-Malo. She is Europe correspondent for Defence News. In Geneva, we have Tamar Gabelnick. She is director of the international campaign to ban landmines and the Cluster Munition Coalition. And from Helsinki, we have Eoin McNamara. He is research fellow at the Finnish Institute of International Affairs. You're all very welcome to Roundtable. Tamar, I'll come to you first. Just tell me, how are you feeling on an emotional level, given all the work you do, hearing that 5 major countries want to take a major step back from this treaty?
Oh, I have a lot of emotions these days. It's been very hard for us in the campaign. Shocked, disappointed, very, very sad. You heard from Zoran, but I come here speaking on behalf of the global campaign, which is made up of members around the world, organizations, individuals that have been working since the early 90s to get a ban on anti-personnel landmines and to build and strengthen that norm. And we've been having so much progress for so long to see it overnight basically be attacked by these 5 countries. It doesn't make much sense to us strategically. I'm sure we'll come back to that. We're confused. We don't understand how a country can proclaim that these weapons will make their population safer when actually what it's going to do is lie in wait to claim civilian lives for decades to come. We're very worried about the future of international humanitarian law when these countries have so little. These Western European countries that are supposed to be those that are defending international law, international humanitarian law, are so easily setting it aside when it no longer suits them. And yet today, our security situation has changed. Granted, no one is denying that. No one is denying that there's legitimate fear in these countries. But to say you will make your safer country by reaching in your toolkit for an obsolete weapon that has been known to kill and maim civilians, mostly 85% of the victims are civilians. It's illogical to set aside a norm that was created for wartime when you think that war might actually happen. Explain to me the logic, because I don't get it. Thank you.
Elisabeth, to you, a lot of these countries, they will all say that this is about Russia. Russia won't play nicely, so they have to play nasty. Is that a good assessment of why they're doing this?
I wouldn't go as far as saying that. I think what we've heard from the remarks and the comments that defense officials have made over the last few weeks, it's based on a reassessment of their defense strategies. And the argument that they've made in these statements is they are willing to reconsider or reassess their position within the treaty to respond more effectively, or what they deem to be more effectively, to potential military threats. So they emphasize in their statement a need for more flexibility for these states, and for, I think, what they called the freedom to adopt weapons as they see fit. So I think, in their assertion, they've said they haven't made these decisions lightly. They've reassessed their defensive strategy in light of the growing Russian threat, but I don't think it was made overnight either.
Thanks, Elisabeth. Eoin, to you, just give us the Finnish perspective. You know, they've got a huge border with Russia and they're obviously very concerned.
That is the reality of having Russia as your neighbour. From a Finnish perspective, a long border and an aggressive neighbour that has foisted all sorts of aggression and all sorts of atrocities and war crimes on its other neighbour, Ukraine, since 2014, and that escalated in 2022. I think our memories are getting very short. Russia has committed many heinous atrocities in Ukraine, in Bucha, in Irpin, in Kherson. The list just goes on and on and on. And nobody in Finland, nobody in the Baltic states, nobody in Poland wants to see these crimes replicated on their territory. They must attempt to keep their population safe by whatever means possible. And I think the assessment of the Baltic militaries, of the Finnish militaries, differs from our previous guest in the sense that they do think that these weapons can have an impact on deterrence. And it's about deterrence. The hope here is that these weapons will never need to be used because Russia will be deterred by them. And if these weapons are used, it will be quite simple. It will be Russian. It will be stoked by Russian aggression. And of course, it has been said, the Finnish Minister for Defense, Antti Hakkanen, he said Finland, if these weapons are reintroduced, Finland will manage the situation in a very responsible way to track where these weapons are placed. We'll use all means possible, all technologies possible to retrieve them after an initial conflict.
Thanks, Eoin. Tamar, to you, these are horrible, nasty weapons, and the majority of people who step on them or are injured by them are civilians. In some cases, they're designed to even look like something a child would pick up. 70 to 85% of injuries globally, worldwide, are not soldiers. They are civilians. They're a horrible weapon.
Absolutely. They're horrific. I mean, they're designed to cause traumatic amputation of a limb or both, to blow off a leg. And imagine a child stepping on that with their small, vulnerable bodies closer to the mine. Imagine what that does to a child if they survive, how many operations they need, how many prosthetics they'll need to go through until they grow and then through the rest of their life. It's just horrid. It's also designed to throw back up dirt and shrapnel into the wounds. It's the worst possible weapon, and that's why it was banned. It's also completely indiscriminate. You can't aim a landmine at a Russian soldier. And we've spoken at length to officials from all of the Baltic countries and Poland and Finland. We also heard that these countries say that they'll use them responsibly in accordance with international humanitarian law. But how is that possible when the very function of a landmine is to be indiscriminate, to just wait there and take whoever comes first? So I think we need to be wary about the claims. Of course, that's what the government is going to tell their people, but in reality, it just doesn't seem feasible.
And Elisabeth, I notice 5 major countries never signed this treaty in the first place. So tell us about the thinking behind the United States, China, Russia, India, and Pakistan. They never signed up.
Right. So I think it might differ to some level for all of these five states, but the rationale behind why the U.S. didn't join initially was primarily due to concerns about implications for their national security, specifically in regions where either, during Afghanistan or now, they would or have landmine deployments. So the reasoning of the government, at least from the statements that they had made, was that anti-personnel mines were considered and deemed as a important capability, and that Russia, not being signatory to this treaty and not hesitating to use such munitions in a conflict with Ukraine or potentially down the line, against another European state, was also a factor. I think it's also important to mention that according to statement made by the U.S. government, they have followed indirectly some of the stipulations in the Ottawa Treaty. So one of them being that they claim that they haven't made or that they haven't used anti-personnel mines for several decades since the Afghanistan war, and they haven't transferred anti-personnel landmines before Ukraine. I think it's quite known that they sent landmines to Ukraine in 2024, but they have followed broadly some of the stipulations without being a signatory of the treaty as well. I think it's worth mentioning.
Thanks, Elisabeth. Owen, to you, if memory serves me correct, the border between Finland and Russia is approximately 1,340 kilometres long. Do you think we're reaching a stage this year then that the Finnish government will start putting mines down on parts of that border?
I don't think plans have gotten to that stage as yet. This still has to go through the withdrawal from the Ottawa Convention, still has to go through the legislative process, through the parliament in Finland, the Eduskunta, and from there, there is leeway then to develop defense plans along those lines. We're seeing this also in the Baltic states. There's plans for border fortifications. The three countries, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, working together. So these weapons might come into the equation in that regard as well. But one thing we see, I mean, this is also drawn off lessons learned from the type of combat we are seeing in Ukraine and the way Russia is fighting in Ukraine. These are not the most precise weapons in the arsenal. That is definitely true in terms of aim, but they do slow down an encroaching force that's willing to use a lot of human wave attacks, use a lot of bodies, like Russia is doing. And it's worth thinking that if Russia values its people, values its soldiers, it won't encroach on these states. It won't make the security situation so dire. And as I said before, then there will be no need to actually use these weapons in the first instance.
Tamar, to you, just give us your impression of how long it takes to remove landmines once they've been placed.
Decades. Look at Cambodia. Look at most of the mine-affected countries that are still clearing their mined lands now. Cambodia, some of those mines were laid in the 70s. So it's no easy feat, and it's very expensive. So we also have to be careful that some might say that these are inexpensive weapons. Perhaps to buy one, but then you have to factor in laying them and protecting them, and demining is very, very expensive. It's a very slow, painstaking process to be done well.
And Tamar, just on that point, if a landmine is placed, as you say, in Cambodia 50 years ago, if a child were to step on that today, it still blows off a limb.
Unfortunately, yes. We just met, we were in Cambodia, as you may know, for the 5th Review Conference of the Mine Ban Treaty. And there we met a young girl who was 11, and she had stepped on a mine when she was a child, so just a few years ago. And yeah, they still function. They just keep going.
Thanks, Tamar. Elisabeth, back to you. I read this week that the United Nations believe Ukraine is the most landmined country on earth right now. So for all the money and all the investment in landmines, it hasn't stopped the Russian advance, has it? It's changed nothing.
No, so I think currently the statistics that are being put out is that 40% of the Ukrainian territory would be mined, mostly by Russian mines. I think it's important to distinguish because sometimes in the industry there's a lack of differentiation between anti-tank mines and anti-personnel mines. Here, the treaty is regarding anti-personnel mines, which is, it targets human beings, whereas anti-tank mines are meant to damage and destroy combat vehicles. Russia has been said to be using both. And we saw in 2023, in some offensives that the Russians launched, the use of these types of mines actually made a big difference in that Ukrainians weren't able to cross in some of the regions that they were trying to take over. So we are seeing them have an impact in Ukraine. I know there was a lot of debate when the US decided to send these to Ukraine, but ultimately Russia's use of them has impacted the Ukrainians from advancing and regaining territory, definitely.
Eoin, do you think Finland will now step out of this treaty permanently, or is it something that they might re-sign in the years to come if the threat from Putin's Russia subsides?
I think if we ever arrive at that day, which looks a very, very long way off, that Russia will no longer pose a threat from its neighbours, I do believe Finland, being the strong protector of rules-based order that it is, will seek indeed to re-enter this framework. But the atmosphere with the security environment in the region makes that scenario look a very, very long way off right now.
Tamar, do you worry that more countries might join Poland and Finland and the Baltic nations and say, if they're leaving, so are we?
Absolutely, it's a great risk. I mean, it really started last year when Lithuania left the Cluster Munition Convention. I think that started the ball rolling and said to the world that it's acceptable to step back from a convention when one's security situation changed. So what does that mean elsewhere? It could be in Europe, but it could be around the world too. I mean, there are numerous other countries facing threats. Some might call them existential threats, like these countries are doing. So how can any of these countries and any of these countries in Europe, their allies who are sort of somewhat giving them a little bit of a tacit consent from them to leave, how can they criticize these countries if they wanted to leave? Because it's the same situation. You say, well, one day if we're at peace and we're feeling good, we accept certain norms, and the day that our situation changes, we put those norms aside. So yeah, there is definitely a risk, and it's not just for landmines or cluster munitions. It could be other weapons too. I mean, where's the line drawn? We thought we had a firm red line in front of landmines and cluster munitions, and now that seems to be moving. So are we talking next biological, chemical weapons? Are we talking about other practices in war, the Geneva Conventions more broadly? I mean, there's a lot at risk here that I don't think these countries have fully thought through.
Tamar, we began this roundtable by hearing from Zoran Jesic, who stepped on a landmine in Bosnia in 1994. How does someone like Zoran begin to rebuild their life after such a devastating injury?
It takes a long time, and as you say, a lot of our members are survivors, and a lot of them, like Zoran, are former military. So that's another risk, is for one's own military forces and being hit by this kind of friendly fire, if you will. We have a member in Uganda, for example, who said it took him a good 7 years of his life before he could start to think about the future. In the meantime, there's a lot of thoughts of suicide. Men who in a lot of cultures feel like they're the breadwinner and they can't provide for their family anymore. It makes them feel less a person. And of course, we all know that the rights of persons with disabilities should be protected and these sort of things shouldn't matter. But when it happens to you, it takes a lot for physical recovery and mental recovery.
Just final question to you as well, Tamar. Do you feel like this has taken the wind out of your sails, all the good work you've done for so many years? I don't wish to dishearten you, but it must have been quite a difficult piece of news to digest.
It has been very, very discouraging. Again, as I say, it's not just the countries themselves that are making this decision. It's the reaction of some of their allies and some of the longstanding champions for this convention that we thought we could count on and are not standing up for the norms in the way that we would like. But we are not going away. We're going to stay around until all states are part of this convention, until the land is cleared. We're obviously going to have a lot more work to do if these countries ever use the mines again. So yes, it was it's a downer, but in a way, it's brought back the fight in this all.
We wish you well. Thank you, Tamar, Eoin in Helsinki, and Elisabeth in Milan. Thank you all. Remember, you can see more discussion and debate on our YouTube channel. Just search for Roundtable, TRT World. But for now, from me, Enda Brady, and all the team here, goodbye, and thank you for watching.